They didn't ask me to leave. They just made it clear I wasn't wanted. So I walked out with nothing. The next morning I came back with the man who owned everything. I built that house with my own hands. Every beam, every nail, every coat of paint carried a memory. My wife picked the curtains. I laid the kitchen tiles while she played old radio songs in the background. We raised our only son there. I still remember his first steps, barefoot on the hallway floor that squeaked in the middle. He used to race down the stairs yelling for pancakes. Years went by, and so did the noise. The house got quieter. Then she got sick. In the end, she couldn't climb the stairs anymore, so I moved our bed to the living room. That's where she died. Peacefully, with my hand in hers. That house became my only anchor. A space full of love, grief, and everything in between. After the funeral, my son started visiting more. He brought his girlfriend around, a polite young woman named Asha. She smiled a lot and complimented the house. Said it had character. I thought that meant she liked it. They got married 2 years later and eventually moved in. I thought it would bring new life to the place. I wasn't ready to be alone anyway. They asked about transferring the house title for tax reasons, they said. Something about inheritance, probate, property savings. It all sounded too complicated, but my son looked me in the eye and said, "It's still your home, Dad. This is just a formality." I trusted him. I always had. But I also remembered something my old lawyer once told me. Trust is good, but protection is better. So I had him insert a clause. Nothing sneaky. Just a safeguard. A lifetime right to live there. Final say in any sale. Majority ownership in case of a dispute. I never imagined I'd need to use it. But life has a way of testing quiet people. It started with small changes. A new couch. Modern light fixtures. She said the curtains were too old-fashioned. I let her replace them. Then came the kitchen remodel. I offered to help, but Asha said she already hired someone. I wasn't consulted again. She started closing the door when she cooked. Stopped asking if I'd eaten. Said my tea smelled strong. The fridge filled with things I didn't recognize. Almond milk, beet hummus, bottled ginger water. Once, she asked me to stop leaving my shoes by the door. Said it made the house look cluttered. My son tried to play mediator. She's just trying to make it ours, he said. I nodded. I wanted peace. But slowly, I became a guest in my own home. A silent figure passing through their space. One morning, she asked me to let her parents stay over for a few days. I said of course. Her father needed surgery in the city. I offered them the guest room. They stayed 2 weeks. Then a month. Then their name appeared on the mailbox. One evening, I returned from my walk and found my belongings moved. My framed wedding photo sat on top of a cardboard box. My clothes were folded, pressed into a suitcase. My armchair was missing from the living room. Asha stood at the door, arms crossed, calm as ever. I think it's time you considered something more suitable, she said. You need peace, quiet. Maybe a senior community. We need this space to grow. I looked at my son. He didn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the floor and said, "It'll be better, Dad. For everyone." I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply picked up my suitcase, stepped outside, and closed the door. I walked 3 blocks to a rundown motel with a flickering sign. The room smelled of bleach and cheap cologne. I sat on the bed, hands resting on my knees, and stared at the wall. The anger came slowly. Not loud, not fiery, just a steady pulse, deep in my chest, right under the ribs. I wasn't angry at her, not even at my son. I was angry at myself, for giving them the house, for not seeing it coming, for being so easy to forget. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out the folder I'd kept in my satchel. My lawyer's old envelope. Inside were copies of the deed, the clause, the power of sale. I reread every line under the pale motel light. The house wasn't fully theirs. It never was. I still held the rights. The clause they never bothered to read, just signed and shoved in a drawer, was ironclad. I made one phone call at dawn. A man named David picked up. He used to be one of my students. Now he ran a quiet but successful real estate firm. He still sent me holiday cards. We met later that day at a corner cafe. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked one question. Do you want them out, or do you just want your house back? I said, I want what's fair. He nodded and opened his laptop. The house would be sold. Legally. Properly. And I would stay, as per the contract. A private suite would be designated for me, with full living rights. They would be given 30 days to leave. No evictions. No fighting. Just quiet correction. David asked if I wanted to serve them the papers myself. I said no. I wanted to walk through that front door with my back straight, not with a grudge, but with certainty. Certainty that I wasn't powerless. That love doesn't mean surrender. That trust must not be blind. I slept better that night. Tomorrow I would return, not as the old man who got pushed out, but as the one who never truly left. The next morning, I stood outside the gate. The house looked the same, but it no longer felt like mine. The curtains were new. The flower beds were overgrown. A second car was in the driveway, her father's. David stood beside me, holding the paperwork in a slim leather folder. He was dressed sharp, calm, unshakable. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I just wanted it over. She opened the door. Her face froze for half a second before she caught herself and put on a thin smile. Back for something? She asked. David answered before I could. We're here on official business regarding the property. May we come in? She stepped back, confused but still holding that forced politeness. Her parents were sitting in the living room. Her mother looked up, surprised. Her father didn't recognize me at first. My son came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes, still in his t-shirt and slippers. When he saw David, he stopped. David placed the folder on the coffee table, opened it with a quiet precision, and began to speak. As per the terms outlined in the original title transfer agreement, Section 4.3 grants the original owner, Mr. Kamal, the right to final decision in the sale of the property.
He has exercised that right.
The home has been legally purchased by me as of 8 a.m. today. Effective immediately. All current non-owners have 30 days to vacate. There was a pause, like the moment before thunder. My daughter-in-law's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her father leaned forward. What are you saying? David remained steady. The house was never fully transferred. There was a clause. Mr. Kamal retained both majority ownership and lifetime residential rights. That clause has been activated. He will continue to live here. You will not. She snapped back into herself, voice rising. You can't just walk in here and sell the house out from under us. This is my home. My family's home. David didn't flinch. It was never yours. You were a co-occupant, and your co-signature never revoked his control. She turned to my son. Is this a joke? Did you know about this? His face said everything. Pale, ashamed, frozen. He looked at me for the first time in weeks. Dad, I didn't think you'd actually use it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't want to, but you stood by and watched while I was packed out like old furniture. Her mother tried to protest, asking if there was some way to work this out. David calmly shut the folder. You can speak to your own legal team, but we're not here to negotiate. You have 30 days. That's generous. The room filled with tension, the kind that doesn't scream, it suffocates. My daughter-in-law paced. She called the contract unfair, outdated, deceptive. She accused me of betrayal, of planning it, of being manipulative. I let her say every word without interrupting. When she was done, I simply said, I gave you my home. I gave you trust. You gave me a suitcase and silence.
She scoffed.
You're doing this to teach me a lesson? I shook my head.
No.
I'm doing this to remember who I am. My son tried to bridge the gap. Dad, please. Can't we talk? You didn't have to go this far. I looked at him, not with anger, but with disappointment so deep it didn't need explaining. You could have spoken up. One sentence. One moment of spine. But you stood there and let her treat me like a stranger. Now she's finding out what happens when a stranger turns out to be the owner. There was no more yelling. Just silence. Heavy, final, undeniable. David handed me a second envelope, my personal residential agreement, drawn up with precision. I would have a private wing, full access, my name listed officially as lifetime tenant. He said we could renovate, modernize, adjust things as needed. I said no. Let them leave first. Let the dust settle. She left the room, slamming the door behind her. Her parents stared at the floor. My son sat down and didn't move. David took his leave. He didn't need to say anything more. He had done his part. I stayed in the kitchen that afternoon, the one she remodeled without asking. I found my old kettle in the lower cabinet, dusty but untouched. I made tea and sat in silence. No TV, no noise, just steam rising from the cup and the steady tick of the hallway clock. Upstairs, boxes began to shuffle. Drawers opened and shut. Suitcases rolled across hardwood floors. The walls had seen it all. Birth, love, sickness, and now consequence. But they didn't creak. They didn't judge. They just stood. By sunset, no one spoke to me again.
Doors closed.
Lights dimmed. The refrigerator hummed like a distant engine. I sat at the table, not triumphant, not bitter, just still. They could keep their words, their opinions, their silence. I had reclaimed something they never truly understood. They thought the house was just a structure, a place to host dinner and show off furniture. But they forgot what was built inside it. They forgot who built it. And that man, quiet, aging, tired but not weak, had never left. He had simply waited. And today he returned. Not as a guest. Not as a burden. But as the one who still held the key. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The hallways smelled different. Less lived in, less tense. I boiled water, made tea, and took slow sips as I listened to the unfamiliar quiet. No footsteps above, no clatter in the kitchen, no voices behind closed doors. For the first time in a long time, the house exhaled. They didn't speak to me. Not a word. My son passed me on the stairs without eye contact. Her father glared. Her mother packed quietly. She avoided me completely. The energy had shifted and they knew it. The silence wasn't peace. It was recognition. By evening, boxes filled the living room. Suitcases stacked by the door. The dining table sat empty. The chairs that once carried our Sunday lunches now watched a slow exit. She walked in, held a folder of documents, and dropped it on the table. "We'll be gone by the end of the week," she said flatly. "Congratulations. You got what you wanted." I didn't respond. I had no desire to win. I had only wanted clarity. She looked at me like she was expecting something, guilt, remorse, maybe even satisfaction. But all she got was stillness. My son lingered behind her, hesitant. "Are you happy now?" he asked. His voice didn't carry anger, just confusion, maybe guilt. I looked at him.
No.
I was never doing this for happiness. I was doing it because you let someone treat me like I didn't matter. He flinched. "You should have just told me." I did. With my silence. With my presence. With my absence. And you chose hers every time.
He didn't argue.
Just nodded slowly. I didn't know it would end like this. "It didn't have to," I said. She turned back to him. "Let's go. We're not staying here to be lectured." She walked out. Her parents followed. My son hesitated. "You're still my father," he said. "And I still care about you." "Then act like it next time," I replied. The door closed. Not slammed, just shut. No drama. Just the end of a chapter. Later that night, I made dinner for one. Lentils, rice, yogurt. Nothing fancy. I ate alone at the same table where my wife once fed our boy mashed bananas and sang lullabies off-key. That table had seen joy, grief, silence, celebration. It held everything they couldn't see. The following days were quiet. I didn't interfere. They packed, arranged movers, cleared shelves. My chair returned to its corner. My framed photo went back on the mantel. The space began to remember me. On their last day, her father gave me one long look before stepping outside. No anger, just a wounded pride. Her mother gave a polite nod. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. She'd written her chapter and left the last page blank. My son came in alone after the movers left. He looked around the now empty living room.
It feels smaller, he said.
No, I replied. It just feels honest. He sat down across from me, shoulders heavy. I made a mess of things. You made a choice. Repeatedly. I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't try. He stared at the floor. She said it was her house too. That she had a right to decide. She had the right to contribute, not to erase. He asked if he could visit. I nodded. This is still your home, but it's not your shelter anymore. He didn't ask what that meant. He understood. Some things can be forgiven. Others just remembered. He left quietly. I didn't watch him go. I simply stayed seated, hands folded, breathing slow. That night, I walked through the rooms. I paused in each one. The living room where my wife read her novels. The bedroom where she hummed in her sleep. The garden where her hands brought color into the soil. The house still held her voice, hidden in corners and tucked inside walls. I wasn't alone anymore. Not because someone had come, but because what was taken had returned.
Respect. Space. Truth.
No apologies had been made. No reconciliations offered. But that wasn't what I needed. I needed stillness without tension. Ownership without argument. Presence without permission. And now I had it. The house wasn't full again, but it was mine again. And in that, there was peace. A week passed. The house was still.
It didn't echo, it rested.
The walls no longer braced for raised voices. The air no longer carried unspoken tension. There was no one watching me, no one avoiding me. I moved as I always used to, without asking. Each morning, I sat on the porch with tea and let the silence speak for itself. Birds returned to the garden. The roses my wife once planted had grown wild. I trimmed them back slowly, one branch at a time. My hands remembered the rhythm. Neighbors noticed. One waved from across the street. Another stopped by with banana bread. A boy I hadn't seen before brought a paper bag of muffins. My mom said you helped build this house, he told me. I smiled.
Yes.
With my own hands, I fixed the broken gutter that had been dripping for months. Oiled the squeaky cabinet hinge in the kitchen. Tightened the loose doorknob upstairs. Small things, unseen until they're needed. That's what I had become in this house before. Unseen until removed. And now restored. David came by to check on me. Asked if I wanted to renovate or repaint. I declined. It's not broken, I said. It just needs to remember itself. He understood. He always had. He said the sale paperwork was final. Nothing could be challenged. They hadn't even tried. The silence had been their surrender. One afternoon, I found an envelope under the door. No stamp, no name on the front. Inside was a letter, written in large, uneven handwriting. It was from my grandson. He wrote that he missed me, that he didn't understand why I left, that his mother said I chose to go, that his father didn't say much. But he didn't believe it. He asked if he could come visit. Said he wanted to sit in the garden again. The one with the pink flowers and the birdhouse we made. I read the letter twice. Then I wrote back on plain paper. I never left you. I just stepped back when I wasn't welcome. This house is yours too. Come whenever you want. I'll be waiting, just like always. I placed the note in a clean envelope, wrote his name, and delivered it myself. No one opened the door. I didn't need them to. The following Saturday, I set 2 cups on the porch table. Just in case. At noon, I heard footsteps. Small ones. Quick and light. The gate creaked. He stood there with a hesitant smile. I opened my arms. He dropped his backpack and ran straight in. He didn't ask questions. He just hugged me and said, I knew you were still here. We spent the afternoon in the garden. I let him water the plants, dig holes, touch the soil. He asked if we could build another birdhouse. I said yes. We had all the time we needed now. When he left that evening, he turned back at the gate and waved. Next Saturday? I nodded. Every Saturday if you want. That night, I walked through the house again. This time, I didn't look for ghosts. I looked at what remained. Not what had been lost, but what had endured. A photo frame. A chipped teacup. The crack in the living room tile I never fixed because she said it gave the floor personality. I sat at the edge of the bed and listened. The quiet wasn't empty, it was honest. No one needed anything from me. No one measured my value in silence or obedience. I belonged here, not because I had reclaimed the deed, but because I had never given up the foundation. They had tried to make me a visitor in my own life. I became the reminder they wanted to forget. But the house remembered. It remembered whose hands laid its bones. Who kissed his wife goodnight under its roof for 40 years. Who came home every day and made sure it stayed standing. I didn't win anything. This wasn't victory. It was correction. And clarity. Some people inherit houses. Others build homes. I had done both. And now, I could live in it again, with no need to prove anything to anyone. I left the porch light on that night. Not out of hope. Out of habit. Because some doors, no matter how many times they close, are always waiting to be opened the right way. Not everyone who leaves deserves a return. But those who remember, truly remember, are always welcome. They thought giving me nothing would make me disappear. But I gave them everything. And that was the difference. And in the end, the house knew.